Now, I want to preface this interview by saying that during our sit-down, we did not have a conversation with Attorney General Kris Kobach regarding the marijuana issue that's been going on the last week or so with the KBI, the raids that we're seeing on THC products and more across the state of Kansas. That did not come up because it was a three-way roundtable with Attorney General Kris Kobach and Will Hild with the Consumers Research after an award that was presented to our Attorney General's office in the state of Kansas for protecting privacy in the state. So well done. Yeah. Round of applause. I know I've said it before, but can we just acknowledge Kris Kobach's kind of a rock star? I love what he's doing. I love everything that's going on right now, and the fact that he has filed lawsuits against TikTok, against Snapchat, against some other places that are selling off our information, our data collection. It's been a major issue, and the fact that he's been able to protect us from a lot of that granted him this recognition from the Consumers Research, and that's what we talked about in this interview with our sit-down with Attorney General Kris Kobach and Will Hild. Kansas Attorney General Kris Kobach. Kris, how are you, my friend?
Great to be with you again. I'm doing fine.
Oh, yeah. Always good to chat with you. And really happy to have on the Executive Director for Consumers Research, Mr. Will Hild. Will, how are you, my friend?
Doing great. Great to be here with you.
Hey, well, I appreciate you jumping on, and I want to start with you, Will, and announce the recognition. Kansas, again, receiving another great recognition with our great Attorney General's office and Kris Kobach, who's been dominating it in the state of Kansas. Let's start with you and talk about what you guys do with Consumers Research and what type of recognition that we just received in the state of Kansas.
Absolutely. Well, I am the Executive Director of a group called Consumers Research, which is the nation's oldest consumer protection organization, founded in 1929, and it has nearly a 100-year pedigree now of educating consumers on issues important to them and defending their rights in the marketplace. And about 5 years ago, we decided that there wasn't enough recognition for state elected officials who are doing important consumer protection work, making sure that consumers in their states were getting the things that they paid for, and we're looking out for conspiracies against their interests. And so we started something called the Consumer Champion Award. Now, I know this is radio, but I'm looking at it right now, and you're talking about a 4.5 by 3 foot metal heater shield. Like, imagine a medieval shield, and we really do bring a metal shield to award the recipients of this Consumer Champion Award, and I'm very proud to announce that this year's recipient of this is your Attorney General, Kris Kobach. So we're very proud of the work that he's done protecting Kansas energy consumers and a host of other cases that they've brought. It's been just an incredible office to watch, a real dynamic office that's defending Kansas consumers. So we're proud to be out here giving him this award.
That's really amazing. And congratulations, Mr. Attorney General. It's always great watching you work in all the battles that you fought, because it was a couple of years, obviously, under the Biden administration was just constant litigation. You constantly battling the federal government. Now you get to work with the federal government and getting things done. But real quickly, talk about some of the lawsuits, the litigation, and some of the battles that you've had over the past led up to this point.
Well, you mentioned against the Biden administration, and so for the first 2 years, we did have to deal with coverage by the federal government. Kansas led 12 nationwide lawsuits where other Republican attorneys general would join us, and the only state that led as many as Kansas did was Texas, which also had 12. But they're 10 times the size of our office in terms of people, so we felt pretty good about that. But while we were, having those high-profile lawsuits against the Biden administration, we were also litigating on behalf of Kansas consumers, and that's what this award is about, where we'd be one case that actually happened after the Biden administration, and it was at BlackRock, which was basically misleading investors into thinking that the investments would go into companies that would yield the highest return. In fact, BlackRock was investing in things that pushed a left-wing ideological agenda, even if it didn't result in the highest return. Or a lawsuit that we brought recently against Snapchat, which advertises itself as something safe for kids 12 and up, when in fact it's more properly something you would label as 18 and up, because there's a steady stream of nude images, sexual content, and drug-related content that no 12-year-old should ever see. So, lots of cases like that, and as you mentioned, with the Trump administration in office, we're now working in the same direction as the folks in Washington, D.C. at the Justice Department in many cases. So, the Office of the Attorney General, our mission is to protect Kansans, and that could be protecting Kansans against a federal government that's violating the law. It could be protecting your constitutional rights, or it could be protecting you against getting ripped off. And that's what this award is all about. Consumers are routinely targeted and are deceived, sometimes for ideological reasons, but more often just because the company wants to make a fast buck and deceive someone. So it's great to be recognized as doing something about it.
Yeah, it really is a great recognition for that. Let's go back to what you had mentioned as well with BlackRock for just a moment, and some of the investments that weren't for our best interest and were pushing some type of liberal ideology. ESG, we've talked about quite a bit on this program, is one of the most dangerous issues in this nation, which was essentially creating a social credit score through the private market. And the kind of investments that we can have, the kind of government contracts. Were we one of the first states to really push back on the ESG movement and the investments that the state of Kansas was actually seeing?
Yeah, we weren't the very first. I mean, Will might be able to pinpoint which state was the very first, but we in 2023 were one of a small group of states that got legislation on the books relatively quickly to protect the Kansas bank accounts, so to speak. So the account for KPERS, which is Kansas Public Employees Registration Retirement System, rather, and the other bank accounts that the state of Kansas, we taxpayers hold, that those assets would not be invested in a manner designed to achieve ideological ends, but rather would be invested solely to maximize return. And so I know Kansas was one of the leading states on that. Will, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just say that echo the Attorney General's comments about the dangers and your comments about the dangers of ESG. It's really actually a double danger to consumers. On one hand, when these big asset managers push a left-wing agenda with money that's not theirs, remember, they're managing someone else's dollars, in this case, Kansas public pension dollars, they are hurting the returns for those beneficiaries, for those retirees, but they're also using those returns to drive up costs at the companies that serve consumers. So, for example, one of the cases that Kansas is currently engaged in, and Attorney General Kobach took a courageous position in, was going after BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, the three largest asset managers, for collusion in the coal market to drive production down, not up, down, for ideological reasons. And that has resulted in a huge run-up in the price of coal, especially after the outbreak of the Ukrainian conflict and Europe's increased demand for coal. So their ideological activities with other people's money have led consumers to have to pay more for their energy costs here in the United States, and that's what that part of what that lawsuit is about. So ESG, I echo, it's a social credit score. It's financial services companies trying to dictate social and environmental policy across the country without ever having to face the ballot box. And this office, meaning Attorney General Kobach's office, have been leading the way in pushing back against that. And really, like you said, there's really no more dangerous type of activity going on economically in the United States right now than ESG to our way of life.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So is it still ongoing? Is it still an ongoing battle? Is that had pretty much died off when the Trump administration came in and wanted to reform investments and wanting to change the economy a little bit and focus more on energy, for example? Has ESG started to die off, or is it still an ongoing issue we need to be concerned about?
Well, our organization focuses a lot of our time on monitoring ESG, and I would say they are retreating, but they have not surrendered. And what I mean by that is they are losing ground. The organizations that they built to activate these sort of collusive practices are starting to crumble, mainly from the efforts of offices like Attorney General Kobach. For example, Net Zero Asset Managers and the Net Zero Banking Alliance that they were using to collapsed shortly after Attorney General Kobach helped file that multi-state lawsuit against BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. But they have not given up. And if you read the articles where they are talking to each other about what they should do, it's really about laying low until they believe the Trump administration will hopefully, move on to a more favorable administration. So that's why it's so important that state offices like Attorney General Kobach continue to push as they have been doing. I think people get the false sense of security when we get a president like Donald Trump in the White House, that they can just sort of put their feet up and not worry about it. And that's why it's so important when you see the hard work like the office I'm in right now, to applaud it and to support it, not just as nonprofits like Consumers Research, but as citizens of Kansas. They really need to be supporting Attorney General Kobach.
Yeah, amen to that. We're talking with Will Hild. He is the Executive Director of Consumers Research, also our very own Attorney General here for the state of Kansas, Kris Kobach. Kris, let's shift gears to what you had mentioned as well about privacy on social media, the lawsuit that you have against Snapchat right now, the lawsuit that we had prior to regarding TikTok, data collection, which obviously TikTok leads to an issue of data privacy against the nation of China and ByteDance. We're working on trying to transfer that here to the United States. But really, in general, any type of data collection, any type of personal information being collected by a private company, being relayed to advertisers, or being relayed to even governments in order to censor us is a major issue. Why is this such a big issue right now nationwide, and why do we have to even do these lawsuits in the first place?
Well, yeah, you're talking about a really big area. And, I think we all know or should know that whenever we look on our phone and start looking at advertisements or looking at purchasing something, there's almost certainly data being collected about you, how long you spend looking at that particular image. And most of the time when we agree to an app and, press the accept after scrolling through a list of disclaimers and notices that most people don't even read, you're agreeing to all this data collected. Now, it becomes problematic when that data is being collected by a foreign country like China that's an adversary of the United States. It's also a problem when the app is being used by someone who is a minor, especially. And so that's the Snapchat case is less about the data collected, although that is part of the problem. The Snapchat is the fact it's the inability of us parents to know exactly what our child is going to be seeing when we see a rating that Snapchat offers at the beginning saying, yes, this is safe for 12-year-olds on up. And then we can't be, I have 5 daughters, and some of them are allowed to have phones, and and they're minors. And my wife and I can't be looking over their shoulder every minute of making sure that everything they see is suitable for them. And so that's why being honest with Kansas parents, so when we make the decision, yes, you can have the app on your phone, or no, you cannot have the app on your phone, that we have all the information we need. So yeah, we're fighting China and the collection of data, but we're also just fighting to protect our kids. And boy, when you have both battles going on at once, it's really important that the Attorney General's office be involved to try to do what we can to protect Kansas consumers.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so wild. You're right. It's a double-edged sword on both ends, trying to battle both fronts here. And I got to be honest, I don't know who would allow their kids on Snapchat, because I've never used a Snapchat, but all I've heard is that it's used to send adult pictures to each other or to sell drugs. I don't know why. Like you said, you have 5 daughters. I have my 11-year-old daughter as well. I don't know why anybody would allow their kids on Snapchat. For you on this is the political content on social media, political content where they are, again, maybe collecting data, but as well promoting a particular agenda on social media based on the information they have on you. Kris, let's start with you here, but with social media, is that still a concern with social media, with the content that you have online, based on the algorithms, based on what they know about you? Is it concerning about what political content may be pushed onto your algorithms?
It's very concerning. And this is another example of where things seem to have improved a great deal because in addition to President Trump being in office and not using social media to basically block one side of the ideological spectrum from getting its message across, basically censoring, asking a private entity to censor at the request of the White House, which is exactly what happened during COVID at the behest of the Biden administration. The Trump administration is all about free speech and has not tried to censor anyone in social media or otherwise. But, President Trump's not going to be there for more than the end of this term, and there will undoubtedly be a president in the future who is eager to, keep ideas that are contrary to his or hers off of social media. And so, again, we attorneys general have to be super vigilant here, because even if the federal government is in the control of someone who is not looking out for Americans' First Amendment rights and is trying to manipulate social media, at least we have states that are willing to step up and challenge that in court and put a halt to it if necessary. So, yeah, it remains an area where we have to be vigilant. Things are not horrible right now, but to believe that this threat is gone would be foolish.
Yeah, it's a great point. Will, last question for you, and same thing. I mean, how much does that impact nationwide elections and maybe even the thoughts of certain political candidates or thoughts of certain political issues based on this content that we're seeing on social media?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly influential, and I'll just make the point that in addition to making sure that the CIA and the FBI don't recreate the offices that were demanding Twitter and Facebook and other companies censor, mostly right-wing, but generally speaking, political speech they didn't like. In addition to that, just let me redouble the importance of making sure that BlackRock and State Street and the other large asset managers aren't pushing a left-wing political agenda, because even if you got the FBI and the CIA out of that game, if you have people like Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, pushing corporations using other people's money, mainly state, local, and federal pension funds, if you have them pushing these corporations to have a thumb on the scale and push a left-wing agenda, you still don't really live in a free country, because you're going to be encouraging censorship just through the large asset managers instead of the federal intelligence agencies. So we have a lot of work to do, but things are certainly improving, and there's reasons to simply redouble our efforts. This is not the time, as I've said before, to put our feet up. It's the time to get excited about the ways in which we can protect our freedoms during this period of time where we have some cover from the federal government.
Yeah, that's right. We can actually make some gains and actually make our steps ahead instead of just holding the ground, which is what we do oh so well for so long. It is Will Hild, the Consumer Research. You can find them, Consumers Research, also with the award from the Attorney General's Office with the Consumers Champion Award for Attorney General Kris Kobach. Kris, congratulations again on the award. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. So much to defend us on all different fronts. We appreciate the time very much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.